Alright, so today we're going to do 3.2. I usually have a printout for you, but the printer is down in the math department today, so got to do a little bit more writing. Apologize for that. So 3.2 is operations, properties, applications. Okay. So it starts out pretty simple. We're going to look at adding real numbers. Got two cases. You got like signs, unlike signs. Unlike signs. So, like signs, we add the absolute value of the sign, or absolute value of each and keep the original sign. Unlike values, we subtract the two and keep the sign. The bigger the two values. This really is as simple as it sounds. So, like signs. An example 3 it. Negative 12 minus 8. Okay. You can look at that and say, Mr. Shipes, that's negative 20. That's all you need to know. Okay. But if you struggle with this, the way to kind of slowly walk yourself through it, you're just adding the absolute value of each and keeping the sign. So let's go ahead and keep the original sign. The original sign for both is negative. We add the absolute value of 12. That's just 12. Absolute value of 8 is just 8. 12 plus 8 is 20. We keep the negative, it's negative 20. Don't make it overly complicated. If you can add negatives just fine, just add your negatives. Okay? But I have to start from a very, very basic standpoint before we can move on. Now, if we're looking at unlike signs, negative 20 plus 4. So basically what it says is you subtract the 2 and keep the sign, the sign of the larger value. 20 is larger, so we're going to keep the negative. 20 minus 4 is 16. Okay. Like I said, this is not meant to be hard. The definitions make it sound harder than it is. Okay. It's basically just a recap on addition and subtraction and what we do with signs, because we sometimes have negative values. Okay. So that's adding real numbers. Everybody okay with that? Next thing. Recap what subtraction is. Okay. So for all real numbers a and b, a minus b is the same thing as a plus negative b. Once again, you know how to subtract, just subtract, okay? I have to hit the actual definitions but it's really, really not rocket science. 6 minus 8, okay. 6 minus 8 is -2. Hoping you can just see that, go with that. Otherwise, 6 plus -8. You can follow the 2 addition rules that we did before. You still get that it's -2. Okay. Don't make it harder than it is. Just subtract it. Okay. If you struggle with addition and subtraction, come see me. We'll figure it out. Okay. -10 minus -7. Okay. Here's where it can get a little tricky. You've got a minus and negative, and you've got an additional negative at the beginning. You got to remember, minus and negative, same thing as a positive. I'm going to keep the sign of the bigger one. It's 10. Okay, so I'm keeping the negative. -10 plus 7 is the same thing as 10 minus 7. Gives you a 3. Answer is -3. Okay. -12 minus 4. They've got the same sign, so I'm going to keep it. -12 minus 4. They've got the same sign, so I'm going to add them. 12 plus 4 is 16. Okay. 15 minus -3. Minus a negative turns it into a positive. 15 plus 3 is 18. Everybody okay with addition and subtraction? Hope so. Okay. Multiplication. Okay. So the result of multiplying 2 numbers is called their product. Two numbers actually being multiplied are called factors. Staying with multiplications, like signs. Okay, so multiplying two numbers of the same sign by multiplying the absolute values to find the absolute value of the product. The product is always positive. Okay. Sounds way more confusing than it actually is. Take, for instance, 5 times 3. Both of them have the same sign, right? Both are positive. 5 times 3 is 15. Also positive. Okay. Look at -6 times, let's say, -3. 6 times 3 is 18. Negative times a negative gives you a positive. So if it's the same sign, you're always going to wind up with a positive. If it's two negatives, you're going to wind up with a positive. If it's two positives, you're going to wind up with a positive. Make sense? That's all that says. And what's complicated words? Okay. Now we're going to look at unlike signs. Again, sounds like a complicated definition, means something really, really simple. Okay? Multiplying two numbers with different signs by multiplying their absolute values to find the absolute value of their product. The product is always negative. All right. Think about it like this. Really, really simple terms. Let's start with 4. Okay. If 4 is my first number, I'm multiplying two numbers with different signs, then my next number has to be negative, say, times -3. 4 times -3 is -12, right? Different signs always winds up negative. So the different signs are always going to have a negative in there. Same thing, if I start out with a -5, different signs means my next number has to be positive, right? -5 times +5 is -25. So it doesn't matter which one comes first or second, negative first, negative second, I still wind up with a negative answer. Okay. Different signs, negative answer. Same signs, positive answer. That's all that says. Okay. So don't make it any more complicated than it is. Like I told you at the beginning of the semester, I don't expect you to memorize definitions. I expect you to know how they work. Okay. All right. Easy enough. So, multiplication's out the way. Let's look at division. Whoa. All right, division. Dividing real numbers. All right. Same thing, like signs. Two cases, you got like signs, you got unlike signs. So, divide two numbers with the same sign by dividing their absolute values to find the absolute value of the quotient. The quotient is positive. Once again, don't make it harder than it needs to be. It sounds like a complicated definition. We'll walk through it step by step. We're dividing two numbers with the same sign. So 2 divides into 6. They're both positive. 2 divides into 6 how many times? 3. Positive, positive, so your answer is positive. Okay? Now if I did it the other way, same sign. -3 divides into -9 how many times? 3, right? Negative and negative still give you a positive. Okay? Sometimes it helps better if I line it up like this, -5 is -3. If you line it up like that, the negatives cancel each other out. You're left with +9 over +3, which gives you +3. Some people see it better like that. Okay. Whatever works for you. Okay, so if you're dividing two numbers and they have the same sign, it's going to turn out to be positive. Okay, doesn't matter if the numbers are negative to start with, negative and negative give you a positive. Positive and positive give you a positive. That leads us to the other case, unlike. Okay. Long definition that says not a whole lot. Okay, so dividing two numbers with different signs by dividing their absolute values to find the absolute value of the quotient. Quotient's negative. So let's look at 15 divided by -3. 15 divided by 3 is 5, and it's got to be negative. Okay. You want to look at it as 15 over -3. Simplifying it, simplifies to -5. Okay. So different signs gives you a negative answer. Different signs gives you a negative answer. Okay. Works the other way too. So let's do -24 divided by 4 should give you -6, right? If you want to look at it as -24 over 4 equals -6, that's fine. Different signs, negative. Same signs, positive. I hope this is really simple for everybody to realize like this is really easy. Review stuff. All right. Okay. Got one more division to talk about. division by 0. This one's pretty simple. Division by 0 is what we call undefined. Okay, so if you get a problem and it looks like 3 over 0, well, that's what it simplifies to, you're going to say that that is undefined. Okay. So if I give you a problem that looks like 5 plus 6 over 3 minus 3, you're going to say, okay, that's the same thing as 11 over 0, which is undefined. Okay. Order of operations. Everybody knows this too. This one does sometimes mess people up. So a lot of people know about the abbreviation. Some people have little fancy sayings for the abbreviations. That's cool too. I don't know any. That wasn't how I was taught it. But if you have some fancy abbreviation for it, use it. That's cool. The P stands for parentheses. E stands for exponents. Multiplication. Division, addition, and subtraction. So, that's kind of the order you go in. You go in parentheses first, exponents next, multiplication next, division, addition, and subtraction. So let's look at it step by step. Yep. Works separately above and below any fraction bar. What that means, okay? This is your fraction bar right here. Works separately on top and on the bottom. So kind of treat each one like their own problem and then kind of combine it, and that's what you're going to do, okay? So don't try to do, okay, I need to do parentheses, so I'm going to do it here and then here. Go ahead, solve the top. Whatever you get for the top, kind of write it up here once you simplify it. Solve the bottom, do the same thing, write it on the bottom, and then we'll kind of combine the two. Does that make sense? If you try to work both of them at the same time, sometimes it can get really, really confusing. Okay, so just work them top, then bottom. Step 2. All right. Okay. Step 2 says, use rules below within each set of parentheses or square brackets. Start with the innermost set and work outward. What that means, sometimes you'll have square brackets. Square brackets are essentially the same thing as a parenthesis. Just treat them the same, okay? What it means by work with the innermost set first and then work outward, the innermost set will be the thing that's in the inside of the parentheses first, okay? So this is your outermost set, this will be your innermost set, okay? That makes sense? So work with your inner parentheses and then kind of work out. You don't want to work all this stuff in these outside parentheses before you work it in the inside parentheses. The first thing I would do with this top part would be add this 4 and this 5, and then I'd multiply by that 3, then I'd subtract by that 5, and then I'd be done with that top bracket. Okay, so kind of work from the inside out. Okay. So, those, maybe I should put that on. So those 2 steps are for if parentheses or brackets are present. I probably should have wrote that first. I apologize. Kind of write it over to the margin maybe in your paper. So if no parentheses or brackets are present, what we're going to do, step 1, we're going to do some examples. So if this step-by-step does not gel with you, just kind of follow us along in these examples. So I know when it comes to math, some people step-by-step really doesn't help them at all. Let's see an example first for it to make any sense. So if you don't have a parentheses or a bracket, first thing we're going to do is apply exponent. So if I don't have this first parentheses here, I'm just going to jump and start with exponents, okay? And we're just going to kind of file it down. Step 2. Okay, so step 2, do any multiplication or divisions in the order they occur, working left to right. Okay. Left to right. So exponents, multiplication, division, working left to right. Okay. If you go to another country, sometimes they don't always work it left to right. United States, We work it left to right. Just like we read it on the page. Step 3. Do any additions or subtractions in the order in which they occur working left to right. Okay. There's your steps. Your step person, you've got them. So, recall everything yourself. I'll let everybody finish right now. I'm going to erase this, but I'm going to leave that up. So it's just kind of a reminder. You're going to need a few of these examples. Okay. If I have a parentheses and then an exponent, what I'm going to do is take everything in that parentheses and raise it 6 times. So it's going to be -2 times -2, -2 times -2 times -2 times -2, which should give you positive 64. This negative cancels this one cancels this one cancels this one, lines are positive. If it's written like that, then it's going to be -2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is negative 64. In order for the negative to be raised to 6, they have to be in parentheses. Does that make sense? So if the negative's out front and not in the parentheses, it stays out front. Okay? It's in the parentheses, it needs to be multiplied with the parentheses. Okay? That trips people up a lot. So I wanted to throw that out there before we start to get some examples. Alright. Everybody okay with that? Reminder? Because you'll see that on your homework. At least one example of that. Okay, so for the example, we're going to use order of operations. First example I have, really simple, 5 plus 2 times 3. Order of operations says I do what first in this case? Multiply, right? I have 2 options. I can add or I can multiply. Order of operations says I do multiply first. 2 times 3 is 6. 5 plus 6 is 11. There you go. Did you bring me some? Just kidding. I hadn't had lunch yet either. I'm starving. Okay, we got 4 times 3 squared plus 7 minus 2 plus 8. What do I do first? Parentheses, right? Parentheses. So let's do what's in the parentheses first, which is right here. Okay, 2 plus 8 is 10, right? So this is supposed to be a 10. I can drop off the parentheses now. What do I do next? Exponents. So I need to take care of this. 3 squared is 9, right? What comes next? Multiplication, which is right here. 4 times 9 is 36. Now what do I do? Addition, 36 plus 7 is 43. There you go. Minus 10. 43 minus 10 is 33. Step by step, works itself out. Okay. Biggest thing where I see in this class is people try to do too many steps at one time and wind up screwing themselves up. Just take it step by step, figure it out. To get better at it, sure, do as many steps as you want to do at once, but when you start out, it's probably better to take it slow, go little by little. Let's look at C. C. C, I've got 2 times 8 minus 12 minus 11 is 4 over 5 times -2 minus 3. Now this is one of these cases, if you've got a fraction, work with the top separately, work with the bottom separately, okay? And what I mean by that, okay, I'm going to do the top first, keep the bottom the same until I finish the top, okay? So just working with the top here, you keep the bottom the same, so I'll go ahead and just write it as it is. First thing I do in the top is parentheses, right? Which parentheses do I do? I've got one here and I've got one here. I do this one, right? Because this parentheses just stands for what? 11 parentheses 4 just means I'm multiplying it to, right? So it's not really so much parentheses as it is the multiplication. Okay. So 8 minus 12 is -4, right? Okay. Okay. Now what do I do? Multiply, right? Did the parentheses? I don't have any exponents. Next thing I do is multiply. Does it matter which one I do first? No, but we're going to work left to right. Okay. So I'm going to keep the bottom just like it is. 2 times -4 is -8. You can go ahead and do this multiplication if you want to, or you can go ahead and write it out and make it an additional step. -11 times 4 is -44, right? I think I heard it. Okay. -8 minus 44 is so let's see. -44. You can use your fingers if you need to. There you go. -52. Okay. Remember, like we said with the subtraction, the signs are the same. They stay the same. Now we can go ahead and solve out this bottom. So I've got 5 times -2 minus 3. What do I do first? Yep. 5 times -2 is -10. -10 minus 3 is -13. So I get -52 over -13. Okay. If I'm looking at that, how many times does -13 go into -52? 4, right? What do these negatives do? They cancel out, right? So what I get is a +4, right? Are you okay with that? So take it step by step, it'll get you there. You don't have to be the fastest person in the world, as long as you get the right answer. Everybody okay with example C? Negative 4 to the 4th. This is what times what times what times what? Okay. So is it negative 4 every time or is it positive 4 every time? Positive 4, right? So it'll be negative 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. Because the negative's not included in the exponent. Okay. 4 times 4 is what? 16. So that's the same thing as negative 16 times 16. 16 and 16. 1, gives you a 9, drop a 0, 6, 1, 6, 5, 256. Negative 256. Are you okay so far? Okay. How about negative 4 to the 4th? Okay, so it's going to be a bunch of negative 4s, right? It's an even number exponent, right? So this cancels this cancels that. I wind up with positive 256. What happens? What happens with this? So negative 3 to the 3rd. So we got a negative 3 times a negative 3 times a negative 3. This one cancels this negative, right? But I still get left with this one. So the final answer is going to be negative, right? 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 9 is 27. So just because the negative's in the parentheses doesn't mean it's going to wind up positive. You have to see how many times it happens. It's an odd number, and it's a negative, it's going to be negative. It's an even number, and it's a negative, it's going to be positive. How about this one? I got negative 8 times negative 3 minus 4 minus 3 minus 6 parentheses. What do I do first? Yeah, do the 3 and the 6, right? Innermost parentheses. 3 minus 6 is, yep, negative 3. What do I do next? I focus on the stuff that's in the other parentheses, right? Okay? Because this is basically just a multiplication. The parentheses, all they're doing is making sure you don't think it's a subtraction, right? Because it's got a negative out front. So this is basically a multiplication. Even though it's got parentheses, it falls under multiplication. This is actually a set of parentheses we can work with. 4 minus negative 3 is positive 7. Very good. Minus a negative turns it into a positive, so we get a positive 7 here. Now we can work with the negative 8 times negative 3, right? Negative 8 times negative 3 is positive 24. Negative and negative give you a positive. I've got a -7 here. You can drop them in parentheses off, they really don't stand for anything. 24 minus 7 is 17. That would be final answer. You take it kind of step by step, you'll get there. Everybody okay with those examples? Let's look at some properties of addition and multiplication. So for numbers A, B, and C, the following properties hold. Closure properties. So, A plus B and A times B are real numbers. Essentially what that means is if A and B are real numbers, A plus B is a real number. A and B are real numbers, A times B is a real number. You can't take two real numbers and wind up with an unreal number. Does that make sense? That's all that says. I can't take two real numbers, add them together and wind up with an unreal number. I can't take two real numbers, multiply them together and wind up with an unreal number. So if you're multiplying, adding real numbers, you're still going to wind up with a real number. Okay. Associative properties. You're looking at A plus B plus C is the same thing as A plus B plus C. You're also looking at A, B, C is the same thing as A times B, C. Pretty sure y'all seen those before, associated. So it's basically saying these parentheses, you can put them wherever you want to, they don't really change anything. So A plus B, and then you add on C. It's going to be the same thing as if you take B and C and add it first and then add A to it. So the order doesn't really matter. Same thing for this. A times B, then times C is the same thing as B times C, then times A. The order doesn't matter. Commutative properties, really close to the same thing here too. A plus B equals B plus A. A times B equals B times A. Order doesn't matter. Okay? multitude. Identity property says that there's a real number 0 such that a plus 0 and a, or 0 plus a equals a. Okay. You add it to it, it doesn't change. Same thing for multiplication. Your multiplication identity number is 1. There's a real number 1 such that 1 times a is a and a times 1 is a. Really, really simple stuff. Okay. Inverse properties. Okay. So your inverse property for addition, for each real number there is a single real number, negative a, such that a plus negative a equals 0. Essentially, if we give you a real number, there's that same negative number is going to cancel it out and make it equal 0. Okay. Does the same thing for multiplication. So, if you have a number a, this is a real number, 1 over a, such that a times 1 over a equals 1, and 1 over a times a equals 1. So essentially, if you give me a real number, 5, its multiplicative inverse is 1 over 5. Because 5 and 1 over 5 cancel each other out, and you get 1. So, really, really complicated sounding for a whole simple concept. So, distributive property of multiplication with respect to addition. A times B plus C is the same thing as AB plus AC. B plus C A, same thing as BA plus CA. That is a C, not a. Basically just distribute the A here. Get that. You can distribute the B and then the C, get that. It's the same thing. Because with our other properties, we can just rewrite this AB plus AC. This is the same thing as that. Just need to know how to distribute. Distribute A here and to C as well, or you could do it the other way. You can distribute B to A and then C to A. However way you want to do it. Time. Keep this mark for break. Okay. do some examples. Make all those words make sense. Let's identify the property. Five plus 7 is a real number. That would be the what property of addition? Closure. Okay. Five plus parentheses 6 plus 8 close parentheses equals parentheses 5 plus 6 parentheses plus 8. What property of addition is that? There you go. Associative. There you go. Bless you. Okay. Eight plus 0 equals 8. What property of addition here? Identity. Okay. -4 times -1/4 equals 1. What property of multiplication is this? Inverse. Okay, 4 plus 3 plus 9 equals 4 plus 9 plus 3. By that one.